Are we all ready to learn? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I'm Ryan Gallo. I'm Nava's Chief Sales Officer. Before I get into it, I want to thank you all again, really, really sincerely. I know how scarce your time is, and I think the best thing that we can do in response for you sharing it with us is try to bring you some value. So I'm really, really excited to introduce Bryan Davis, our national practice leader. He is going to talk to you guys about self-funding, answer some questions about what it is, exploring why you might want to consider it, and if you do, how you could leverage and work with your broker to get some value out of it. And the good news is you don't have to be an expert because Nava is. So I'll leave you with that thought. I also will just tell you that you've chosen very, very wisely by coming up here and attending this session. I would ask you not to share that with the crew downstairs because I'm sure they're going to do a great job. But you guys can all feel really, really good about yourselves and your decision making. With that, I'll pass it on to Bryan Davis. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. I will slip you the 20 later. Well done. So this topic that Ryan just mentioned, self-funding, is near and dear to my heart. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I can't think of a day in my 25-year career in benefits consulting where this topic has not come up in some form or fashion, either talking about a client situation, talking about a strategy we're thinking about, or just trying to work through trying to find value for our clients. And so it's been, like I said, pretty near and dear to my heart over the course of my career. And so today we are going to unpack this from three different lenses. The first is just setting the table, like what it is, why should we be thinking about it, and why it's really gaining a lot of popularity in really mid and small companies now. The second is how to actually get, as an HR leader, your organization on board with this. Like, how do we position this internally? Kind of a continuation from what we heard earlier down on the main stage as well. And then third is how to work with your broker. Like what to ask your broker for, how to leverage them, how to make sure that you are getting what you need as an HR leader to make this decision. And so to help us with this today, we have two fantastic guests. We have Kristen and Lena, and I will let you both introduce yourselves. Kristen, maybe I'll start with you, and if you could just do a 30 seconds at the end on Pareto for the folks in the room who may not be familiar with them. Go from there.
Sounds like a plan. I have a hard time holding still and sitting in the middle, so this is going to be fun. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Kristen Rivers. I run the West region for ParetoHealth, and I've been there for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years. I think my anniversary was May 31st. So I have background. I was at United Health Group for a little over a decade. And I was in the pharmaceutical space before that, and I'm a recovering lawyer. So I think I picked every hated industry you could possibly imagine, except for timeshare sales. Went and worked there, and now we're on the right side of the fight. And find me for a drink on why the change and what happened at United and all of that, because I'll take the trifecta. I think you said I'll probably take the full 30 minutes if I start talking about that. But just to give you all a little bit of background on ParetoHealth, what we do is crowdsource healthcare solutions to help companies of all sizes get to do what the Apples and Googles of the world do today and reduce the risk and volatility associated with going self-funded. And I will pass it to Lena. That was less than 30 seconds.
So, Lena, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Lena Bradshaw. I'm the VP of HR for Caltrol. Been with the company for about 2 years. Caltrol, we have about 340 employees, about 240 some employees that are covered on our healthcare plan. So kind of smaller company. My background is big companies like Los Angeles Times, Guitar Center, Yahoo. So totally used to benefits of the big companies and kind of how much more employees get. So coming to a smaller company like Caltrol, my mission was to kind of figure out how can we give the employees the same benefits, like Kristen mentioned, like Google's and Apple's, right? But at a smaller company. So my team and I, we've been working really hard on figuring it out, working with our broker and figuring out how to make those benefits available to employees. A little about Caltrol. So Caltrol is industrial automation company. We are a partner to Emerson. Emerson is a Fortune 200, I think now, but we basically take Emerson product, we install it, we service it. So we have employees anywhere from someone who's a technician, was just a high school degree to engineers who have like master's degrees. So again, just making healthcare and making benefits available to everyone in the company is very important to us.
Great, thank you. So, Kristen, question for you. We have noticed, I've certainly noticed over the last few years, is that the point at which employers start to really think about self-insurance for their organization has started to drop. And it's come down in the mid-market and the small market pretty aggressively. We're seeing a lot of activity in this. A lot of our clients in that space are now self-funded or moving towards being self-funded. Kristen, what do you attribute that to, sort of this rise in popularity of self-funding as it's coming down market?
A few things. So employers are extremely frustrated. I think like McKinsey released a study, I want to say last year, before all the carrier stuff has been in the news throughout the course of last year and the beginning of this year and continuing here. And they are looking for solutions to help drive down cost without sacrificing benefits. In a fully insured setting today, and how many of you are fully insured? A few? Self-insured? A few. Okay, good. In a fully insured setting, the ways that you can save are usually cost shifting onto employees, downgrading benefits. Everything's a takeaway from the employees and their families. And that's been driving frustration. During COVID, it was, we can't disrupt our people, we'll take the increases. We've moved past that. And employers need to find ways to save without it being we have to cut benefits in order to do that. I think McKinsey's study showed like 1 out of 3 employers is currently shopping for a new benefits broker because they're looking for alternative solutions to change what's happening on their plan today. It doesn't help the renewal increases that are coupled with that in the fully insured setting and where medical costs are going today. So I think the trifecta of looking for something different, rising costs, and renewal increases without any level of transparency is what's driving a lot of that frustration.
Yeah, well said, and 100% agree, by the way. Lena, tell us a little bit about your journey, and specifically at Caltrol, because I know you all went through this transition recently. Maybe tell us a little bit about what prompted you to do that and sort of how it's going today.
Sure. Yeah. So we are currently in the first year of a self-insured plan, and we have a captive stop loss, and that kind of helps us mitigate risk. But what prompted us to go self-insured is Brandon in the beginning mentioned Groundhog Day, right? So what renewals look like every year, you get that 15-20% increase, right? You kind of ask them for justification as to why you get that increase. You get no justification. Your broker maybe gets it down to like 10%. It's still a double-digit increase, right? And what do we do? I mean, the company is not going to eat those costs. So you take in some costs, you pass in the costs to the employees, but at the end of the day, like every year, employees are paying more and more for insurance, and insurance is getting like worse and worse. So we wanted to change that. We wanted to give better benefits to our employees. And again, instead of renewal as being like, hey, like let's go shop the market and let's figure out like what's better for us, we're now thinking strategically, right? So this year we're looking at, okay, like what pharmacy benefits can we offer to employees? What cost containment strategies can we use? So we've shifted from catching up to our benefit costs to actually having a strategy and figuring out how to make those benefits available to every single employee. And again, going from like 1-year strategy to like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, right?
Great, thank you. So, Kristen, one of the things that we tend to find is when we start talking to clients and prospects about moving self-funded, we do a fair amount of myth busting along the way, like misconceptions or beliefs about what it's going to be or what some of the concerns might be, and just allaying those, or actually giving some facts to help folks understand it. What are some of the common misconceptions that you run into in this space?
The first one I would say is there's a common misconception that fully insured is safer than self-funding, especially with everything that's happening today, because I think the carriers have done a good job of training everybody to think in 12-month increments. So you're thinking there's variability in self-insured. That seems a little scary. But if you have that variability on a fully insured basis, your renewal the next year, let's say you perform above 100% loss ratio in the current year, that just means next year is going to be a 20, 30, 40% increase, right? So picking up the sight line to look at this from a long-term trajectory, to Lena's point around what is our long-term benefit strategy and how are we going to win and save in the long term. Two others I would say is we are too small to self-insure and self-insurance is too volatile. But again, I'll take the full 30 minutes if I jump into both of those topics. So I will defer back to Bryan to see if he wants me to keep going.
No, you're good. We could keep going on this. You and I were talking about this before. I think another one, interestingly enough, is this belief that it's going to be too big of a burden on, for example, our finance team or our legal team. What we have found is just actually going in and talking to those teams about what specifically this means, how it's going to impact them, and then what the advantages of it going forward are, is both before we make that decision and then like regularly after we've made that decision is a really important step to get them to buy in, and we'll dig into that in a little bit more. But it is a misconception that we run into quite a bit, that I can't burden my company with this. Well, there really isn't all that much burden at the end of the day. Lena, maybe a question for you here around when you were going through this transition, were there any myths or misconceptions that you had going in, and then how did those play out?
Yeah, I think to your point, it's the myth is it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to expose us to a lot of financial risk. And then our employees are going to feel like guinea pigs in some cost-saving experiment, right? Which is all not true. With the right partner, with our broker, they've been with us from the beginning. With the training that they gave us, we've also talked to other peers to make sure we kind of knew what we were getting into. All those things are just myths, right?
Yeah.
So it's work, but it's different kind of work. Again, we're looking at our reports, we're looking at our data, and we're thinking, okay, like, what can we do? Are there any red flags? What can we do to help employees save money and to help the company save money? And now my executive team, my CEO, my CFO, my VPs, like, they're super excited every time I show them our report and show us how, that we're running at 90% of projected costs. And that money is going to go back next year to our employees. So we're already kind of talking about, okay, like, what can we do to help our employees? So, are we going to make the deductible less? Are we going to make their payroll deduction less, right? So again, it helped us become a lot more strategic. And I'm going to keep saying this rather than playing catch up.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned that was that really resonated with me is the impact on employees down the road by getting into these programs, saving money, being able to reinvest that money back into the employee experience or even their own contributions or pocketbooks. We often forget about that because we're just talking about, hey, we're going to save money. We've got different plan designs we're going to put in, whatever the case is. But we shouldn't forget about the impact we can have on employees when we do that as well. And Lena, you also mentioned your executive team. So that's a really good segue to shift gears for a moment. As you were going through this, what approach did you take within the organization just to get everybody on the same page here?
Our CFO was our biggest stakeholder, right? So like we had to convince him first. So my request to a broker was simply like, hey, like, explain this to me like I'm 5 so I can explain it to my CFO. And they did exactly that, right? Like they helped me with the PowerPoints, they helped me with the one-pagers so that we were able to walk into the meeting with the CFO and the CEO and explain this program. And they also sat in those meetings with the executive team. They've sat in with the broker has sat in with the meetings with the employees. So again, if you're going through this, it is super helpful to have the right partnership.
And did you run into any roadblocks along the way?
I think as soon as you show the executive team how much money you potentially could save. So when we went was the current plan for this year, we were able to mirror exactly our plan from last year with no increases to the employee. Our increase, had we stayed with non-self-insured model, our increase was about 15%. So just going into self-insured mode, again, we're able to do this without any kind of increases. And then looking at, we're at like 5 months now, we're running at about 90% of the projected costs. So again, next year, we're going to be able to turn that money around and help employees save even more. So I don't think, I guess I'm segueing. I don't think there were any roadblocks. I think the roadblock would have been if we were not able to explain it to finance, if we were not able to explain it to the CFO, CEO, the executive team, because we have to have buy-in from them in order to move forward. But thankfully, our broker was there to help us and jumped on calls, helped us with the communication, both for employees and for the executive team. So that was very, very helpful.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's funny how that works when you lead with the savings. And now let's figure out how to make this work is not a bad tactic. And the interesting thing too is that every executive team is a little bit different. And so I think from the broker's perspective, I know one of the things that we certainly kind of train our teams to do is to ask our clients how to actually educate their executive team, because they are a little bit different across the board. Like some of them like it as like getting information one way, some of them like a different way. So just having that dialogue to make sure that we're dotting those I's and crossing those T's. Kristen, I imagine you probably find yourself in a number of these conversations and sort of helping executive teams get to the right answer here. What has been your experience around that in terms of what works well, what doesn't work? Curious.
You kind of stole my thunder because you started to hit on it by understanding how decisions are made in an organization. You all know your executive teams the best. You know who needs to be involved. If we're talking about a fully insured plan and nominal increases or increases year over year and plan changes, that's not necessarily getting the attention of your CEO, CFO, or who the key stakeholders are within your organization that need to be involved in a decision like this, right? If you're going self-funded and you're changing the model of how you're financing the benefits, that is going to require buy-in from your key stakeholders. So understanding what the decision-making process looks like, working with the right broker partner to educate your leadership team, as Lena outlined, to ensure or pull them into the process of deciding and into the meetings, asking them to invest the time. And then think about the cost of healthcare and benefits today. When you all get to go back and when Lena gets to go back next year and show her executive team, like, hey, the decision I recommended and drove saved our company $2 million. One, can I have all of it to reinvest back in our people? Which might be no, but at least half of it. You then get to take and reinvest back in your population, back into the people and their families, versus it being the only way you can save is takeaways, right? And I think understanding the decision-making process is key to answer your question, and pulling in your leadership team at the right time. No one wants to be in at the fourth, fifth, or the decision-making process and going, wait, what are we doing? What's a captive? Why are we self-insuring? I don't know about this, and kind of pumping the brakes on the process and starting the education process early. Engage with the Nava team to start layering that education in, not only for yourselves, but also for your leadership team, so that it's not, hey, we got a crazy renewal. Let's drink from the fire hose and try to learn everything we possibly can in a compressed renewal timeline that is going to, send us into the next year on the defense versus it being a proactive decision.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe just unpack that a bit, just in terms of the cadence as we think about the annual calendar, for example. So, 70% of organizations are January 1st renewals. What does great look like in your experience in terms of the timing which employers should start thinking about this, and then bringing in their leadership teams to have that discussion? Maybe a question for both of you, actually.
Yep. Do you want to start? You want me to? I feel like each organization is different. So if you're privately held, the decision is with 2 to 3 key stakeholders. I think 90 days or more is ideal versus the time that you're going to be making a decision. And the knowledge of self-funding within your organization will also, I think, inform that timeline as well. So ideally, as early as possible. If you're fully insured today, you've never worked for a company that's been self-insured, or your leadership team has not, starting that process as early as possible so that everyone gets comfortable with the decision and can go through that education process and say, it's not a sit down for 90 minutes or an hour to say, throw up everything about self-insured. Okay, I absorbed it. What's happening? You're going to need kind of those layers of education with your broker partner and whichever key stakeholders they're bringing in, right? Your third-party administrator in a self-funded setting is going to be an extension of your team, as is the Nava team, right? So layering that in the timeline that works for you. We've seen it done in 30 days. We've also seen engagements start 11 months out to the effective date. So it's going to vary, but I think it's important to understand the knowledge base and build the timeline based off of that. And the Nava team can help you do that.
Yeah, great. Lena, anything to add to that?
Sure. We have all sorts of timelines. So like I said, I started with the company about 2 years ago. I started in July, hired Julia Quinn, who's over here, in August, and she's our Total Rewards project manager. And then we changed the broker to Nava in September, with open enrollment starting October 31st. So super fast. Looked at, again, weren't able to make a lot of changes just because those 30 days, it's a very, very short timeline. This past year, when we did move to self-funded, we started in about August, as far as going to market, looking at all of the options before deciding on the self-funded model too. So I would agree, probably 90 days is about, the sweet spot. I personally like to be early. So that's why August conversations have been had. But 90 days is about the right spot there.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting. So we have maybe an extreme example I'll share. We have a client right now that is going through this evaluation process. And we went through the exercise of learning a little bit about their executive team, how they want to go through this decision, this decision. And what we ended up coming out with was a 3 or 4 part series, basically, with their executive team starting in the first quarter. So we started this in February, and we're going through, okay, here's what self-funding is. Here's why it's something you should think about. That was the first session. The second session was a little bit more around what we can actually think we're going to be able to save here, and then how that's going to impact the cost of your healthcare plan, how it's going to impact your contributions, et cetera. And then the third session is going to be where we actually see some results and see some numbers and be able to actually do that. But just having that long tail to be able to kind of walk into this instead of sprint into it, I think was really important for that executive team, just kind of to illustrate the point. There's a lot of different flavors in terms of how you can go about this, but I think one thing I would hope everybody leaves with is that I think the earlier that you can get started on it, working with your executive team on this, working with your broker on it, the better off you're going to be, just in general.
I think I would add that you all know your teams better. So kind of figure out what works for you personally and works for your executive team. That's kind of my advice.
Totally. So transitioning there, we've been talking about the broker quite a bit here. I think Well, actually, I'll ask the question before I give my opinion on this. Kristen, where do you see brokers most often either accelerating or potentially stalling, if you will, this path? Because I met you work with a ton of brokers. I imagine you have a pretty good perspective on this one.
Yeah, so we have a limited distribution model, so we don't work with all brokers. There's ones that are educated and understand the self-funded process and self-funded products, right? Especially in this market, it's a predominantly fully insured, saturated market that's quickly changing. What I would say is usually, I think the ideal setting is exactly what Bryan outlined, is layering in the education process with their clients or prospects as early as possible. I'm trying to think on stalls, and you hire a broker or consultant because you all are not experts in everything relating to benefits and submerged in it 24/7, right? That's what your broker or consultant's job is to help you, advise you, and give you guidance on your decisions. Where we see stalls, and it's something that we call like giving a strong recommendation. They're going to evaluate the universe for you and come to you instead of giving you like 9,000 options on a spreadsheet. They're going to give you, this is what we think you should do. Or if I was in your shoes, here's what I recommend that you do. And that's where where we tend to see some stalls, is a hesitation to help their client and guide them to that decision, and kind of standing firm on what the right pathway is, because they are the experts in everything insurance related, and they can help give you that advice and guide you along the way.
Yeah, I love that. One nugget to leave with is never be afraid to ask your broker, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I love it when our clients ask us that question. And I love it when our teams actually proactively say, if I were in your shoes, this is the decision I would make. Because at the end of the day, that is why you're hiring them, is for their expertise and for their advice. Lena, you'd mentioned a few times already around sort of the role the broker played in this decision, both kind of helping you with the executive team, the transition, the employees, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about that experience, at least in terms of the value that the broker brought to you during that transition, and sort of your position there?
So, your broker, the right partnership, it has to be a strategic partnership, right? And to both Kristen's and my earlier point, you have to trust them that they will bring the right decision to you, the right options for you. The reason why we switched from a previous broker to Nava was because we've asked them for what would be the best decision, and we've asked them to take us to market to look at other options, and they came back with, well, this 20% increase is your best decision, and that's it. Like, there's nothing else you should be doing. So if your broker says there are no other options, run away. Because that is not a partner. There is someone who is going to do, like, not wanting to do more work, not wanting to go and do that research. I think a good broker would be, if you ask them a question, if you ask them, hey, like, what's the best decision, or what would you do in my shoes, they would bring you several options.
Yeah, the interesting thing, I'll maybe get on a soapbox here for just 1 minute, but I think that question around there are no more options available. I think as a 20+ year broker, I can look everybody in the eye and say there's always another option available. The question is, what are the trade-offs around it? And so I think we try to do a good job of explaining to our clients, there's always another option, but there are trade-offs that you need to consider. And if we understand our clients' business, their objectives, their leadership teams, personalities, et cetera, we're going to be able to put ourselves in a good position to actually explain to them, here's what we would do in this situation, and here is why. And there are some other options for you over here that we may not, for example, recommend. And it's because of the things that we learn when we as we've been working with you. On that thread, Kristen, what are a couple things that HR leaders should absolutely expect, or maybe demand from their broker as they go through this process of evaluating, hey, should I be self-funded, should I not, and what does that look like for me?
I think if that's a pathway that fits for your organization, I think coming up with a game plan as early as possible, which sort of hits on a lot of what we've already talked about. the expectation around education. Here's the pathway we're on. Here's what we're looking to do. Here's our organization's short-term and long-term goals. What are your recommendations, or what are the pathways that we can go down and explore so that we can hit our goals as an organization? What tends to happen sometimes with certain brokers is they will narrow their scope or narrow their focus into just advising on benefits off a spreadsheet. You can tell I really like spreadsheets. I actually was an analyst at one point in my life and like spreadsheets, even though it doesn't sound like it right now. But they will focus in on just the benefit options and, you know, those incremental increases. And having a strategic, your expectation should be having a strategic advisor who's going to lead you down the path. If you outline, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, this is the educational timeline should come from them, as Bryan outlined. And then you pull in your key stakeholders. They should be taking you down that process, checking in with you and ensuring that you're comfortable and understand to the level that you want to. And then when you're ready to go or ready to do it, they're going to do 99.9% of it for you. And they're going to shift that into something that's more of, I think Lena said it earlier, instead of being reactive to renewals, if they're not proactively bringing you new things, you probably have an issue. And instead of sitting in the reactive cycles, having an advisor who's going to proactively take you through this and let you become more strategic, to your point, and make strategic decisions and proactive decisions about your plan, I think is critical.
Yeah, fantastic. So last question for you both, and then we'll take some audience questions. Parting advice for organizations in the audience that are that know they're going to be wrestling with this soon, are wrestling with it today. What advice would you give them in addition to anything we've said today?
Ask for options, right? Even if if you're thinking going self-funded, ask your broker to show you what is self-funded going to look like, what is level funded, and what other options do you have. That's kind of my advice, and also involve your broker early, right? To everyone's point here, to make sure that you get that education, so that if questions come up from your exec team, from the employees, you're able to explain why they change, right? Because a lot of times, like, we're concentrating on like what the change is, but we don't explain why. And I think having that answer to why we're changing, why we're moving in this direction is important. And your broker, as a strategic partner, they should be able to help you with that. I mean, when we're hiring a broker, we are hiring them as a consultant, as a partner, right? And as an extension of your team, of your HR team, your benefits team, and that's how they should perform.
Completely agree with you. And what I would say is, do not accept the status quo. If you're asking for something and not getting it, run in the opposite direction and find someone who's going to help you achieve your organizational objectives. You all have the power to change healthcare. Everybody talks about legislative change, et cetera. Employers have the power to change healthcare. And so don't accept help from somebody or stay with somebody who's not helping you achieve that objective. And if you have a business plan and you're supposed to push your organization forward, you need people supporting you who are going to help you achieve that.
Yeah, well said. So we have a few more minutes before we adjourn here. So we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Anybody wondering anything? For it?
Sure. I'm wondering, as you think through making this switch from fully insured to self-insured, or self-funded rather, what are some of the comms, enablement, and change management considerations you should take as you think of how it affects employees and their families?
I think education, right? The why behind why you're moving to the self-funded plan, right? But with the self-funded plan, you also have the capability to build out your plan as you want. So what we did for this year, we mirrored our last year's plan, so that there is almost no change to the employees. So employees didn't feel like, hey, like we're doing this cost saving program, right? But there are a lot of changes to them. So that's the beauty, I think, of the self-funded plan. Like you're able to make it as rich as you want.
I will add to Lena's commentary that we talked about knowing your executive team. You guys also know your population the best and your people the best, their families the best, right? You have to, one, decide if you're planning to communicate to your company that you're going self-funded. Not all organizations will share that. Sometimes it's, if you're with, let's say, Aetna, and you're going to move to an unbundled self-funded model, having them understand that your ID card is going to say a third-party administrator, but the network we're accessing is still Aetna. And your benefits are going to stay the same, if not become richer. And we're adding all these tools and resources to help you all, not only save, but also enhance your benefits. First, decide whether you want to share that you're going self-funded. Some organizations do, some don't. And then second fold, have them understand how the change impacts them specifically. Because if they're in the process of acquisition of care, I feel like that's usually top of mind for people.
Yeah, maybe one yes and to that too is like one of the constraints that every organization has, whether they're going self-funded or not, is employee disruption. And how much employee disruption can you take as an organization, or do you want with that change? And so that's a good conversation to have with your broker to basically say, look, I can take a little bit, but not very much. That's actually going to impact how they structure that self-funded program, so that we can basically get within that constraint. And so it's also just a dialogue with your broker around how do we best communicate this for our employee population internally as well. Yeah.
Organization is self-funded, and I inherited this when I joined the company like 2 years ago. So I have a question about how should your broker help you to be a better captive member? Yeah.
Do you want to go? You want me to go?
What's helped us is looking at the claims data and figuring out what's driving the costs. The broker, yeah. So what Nava, yes, what Nava does for us is we get reports on it's probably monthly basis. I ask them for monthly basis, and it's an executive report, and basically says like, here's how much money we spend on claims, right? Like, here is what projected costs are, where are we at compared to those projected costs. And then we also talk about claims. We know where our high cost claims are, where we're spending the money, right? We look at the pharmacy claims. So again, they should be your strategic partner and tell you like, hey, like here's what you can do to save money. Here are the programs that you can implement, right? And here's what you can do next year in order to keep costs down.
That was perfect. And just to build on that, there's going to be resources available through the captive. So as they're doing an analysis of your claims, not only what's happening in your population, but also proactively, what are they seeing on the rise or on the horizon? And here's the solutions in the captive that can help mitigate that we feel like you should deploy to help. There's also usually other solutions that they're going to recommend. Because if you're self-funded, you should have the ability to pull several levers, not only those that are available through a captive, but also the ones that your consultant sees and recommends to help you manage that spend. Nothing should ever be a surprise anymore. Because there's point solution fatigue times 1,000, right? Because you've shifted into this strategic plan now that you can see your claims and see your data, to Lena's point, and you should be able to pull levers to help control and mitigate what they're seeing and also address what's happening in the claims historically as well. I'm assuming you're not a current Nava client. Okay.
Well, welcome. I saw another hand earlier. We have about one more minute.
This year, but because we're in California, most of our employees are on an HMO plan. So our broker advised us that it doesn't seem feasible this year for us to move. One, I just want to know, is that really the case? And two, if so, what are some long-term strategies for us to eventually get there?
Short answer or long answer?
The 1 minute answer.
Okay. That I don't think that that's accurate. We'd probably need to dive a little deeper on what type of HMO and what your current spend is, but we transition groups all the time out of an HMO setting. Now, if you move straight into a self-funded model that had direct stop loss that doesn't have the protections of a captive, the HMO, you're probably not getting any experience reporting. So that may be where they're thinking that it's not feasible. That is definitely not the case. They just likely don't have access to a solution that they can offer you.
So on that note, and I don't know if this is the case or not, so take that grain of salt. But oftentimes when we see a broker advise not to leave an HMO to go self-funded, a big portion of that decision is because they can't get claims access. To Kristen's point, that landscape is changing quickly. There's a cottage industry of vendors out there that can actually take census data, run it against databases within hospital systems, and figure out your risk profile very easily, very quickly. And so if that was the blocker, I would push back on that and say, let's see if we can figure out what our risk profile is so we can have more information. So again, I don't know if that was it, but just a little plug there. And with that, we are at time. Thank you all. Appreciate you being here.